Now, I know I got everything laid out, kind of a mess right now, but I wanted to be able to show you guys the difference in the inside diameter of a -8 and a -10 line, so you can see why we're doing what we're doing. So this is a -8, and I believe it's about a 1/2 inch ID. So let's see, just about, so it's about 3/8. Yeah, so there you go for that. Give you another look at that. So not quite a 1/2 inch. And then here is the ID of the -10. So you can see 1/2 inch there. But here's the thing, doesn't seem like a lot until you do this. Can you guys see that size difference? I think it's just a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch, but that makes a huge difference on fuel delivery. So wanted to show you guys that firsthand before we start cutting into everything. So I'll start laying the fittings out and we'll get to it. All right, guys, so what I'm getting ready to do is take my fuel line that I got here and start feeding it like how I have my return line, and take this and start feeding it through here, and it's going to run down along the top of the tank and then down, and I'll go ahead and show you where it's going to pop out at. I guess I can take the time now to show you a little bit of the underside of the car. Got my, I don't know how much you guys will actually be able to see, but got all my transmission lines here that I put a bag over here to keep water from stuff from getting in it. And this is my, this line here is for one of my PCV lines, and I run it and it just dumps out back behind the rear of the car. 9-inch rear, tunnel mount, torque arm, chromoly, 3-point BMR things, whatever you want to call those. Cross members, sorry. Well, not cross members, that's a cross member. Whatever those things are called, guys, I can't remember. Viking dual adjustable revalve coilovers. Transmission cooler back here. And then where my fuel line comes out at, so you can see here that I have my return line here, and this line here is the for the overflow, my rubber line here. So everything will pop out right here. So I'm going to start feeding that down through and then show you guys the next step. All right, guys, so something else I wanted to show you while we're at it, and overhauling the fuel system. May or may not have to remake the video I did laying up under the car. It's kind of hard to tell when you got the camera mounted on your head. I can't really see what you guys are actually going to be able to see. So, but something I wanted to show you guys was, whenever you go to upgrade your fuel system, got to have a really good filter. This is one of the Racetronics. I believe it's a couple, 200 or 300 micro, I believe. I'd have to go back and look at it, but stainless steel filter. And I wanted to show you guys, what one of these looks like on the inside, and then also give you another comparison of what these ends were that were initially on the car, before we're now taking the time to upgrade it. So this was a -12 O-ring boss, or ORB, with the O-ring here that seals in, and that shows you, -12 to -8, the comparison. And then this is the -10. So big difference. So switching to these, and then I'll go ahead and take this fuel filter apart and show you guys what it looks like on the inside. Set that up. So like I said before, this is an E85 car. So one thing I can speak on is I always run a stabilizer in this car, which I'll be able to show you right here. The Lucas Oil ethanol stabilizer. I run this in probably 6 ounces or so in every single tank that I put in the car. Something I can say about that is I've had this car sit for months and months on end over the course of having it for 3 years now, sitting all winter long. Always put that in there. I've had 3 different sets of injectors in the car, and none of them have had any issues. I've had them every time the car would sit, I would send them off to be flow tested. I had a set of 120s, a set of 160s, and now the car has 210s. Probably end up putting another set of 210s and run 16 injectors if we decide we want to switch to ethanol. So that's kind of already in the back of my head. But one thing I can say about that Lucas Oil stabilizer is that stuff has been awesome in keeping the injectors and the fuel system, the filter and everything clean. I mean, you hear some stories about how E85 can be a dirty fuel. I hear more that ethanol is a lot, methanol is a lot harder. It's a dirtier fuel. It's a lot harder on the fuel system, the O-rings and stuff like that. It does burn cleaner and faster, which is the benefit of it, and cooler. But I think that for what we're doing with the car now, I don't quite need to switch over to methanol yet. I could be wrong, and I could have to make that switch in the middle of the season if we can't keep up. But you know, there's something about driving my car on the street or to go get gas, or trailering it and filling up at the pump, and then we're ready to race. So I'm not really quite ready to give that up yet. But wanted to show you guys this filter. You can pull that off there. And I don't know if you guys can quite see down, where'd the light go? There it is. If you can kind of see down in there. But this filter has been awesome at keeping injectors clean. I also run, and this, I can't even remember the last time I actually took this apart to look at it. But I actually do not believe it needs to be cleaned at all. So I probably won't spray it down with anything. I won't spray it with brake clean because I don't want to get that residue in the fuel system. But definitely get you guys a good filter. The triple pump setup that I currently have in the car has its own filters as well at the bottom of the tank. And they sit, and it pulls from the bottom of the tank up through the filters into the pumps and then pushes it out. So it's has those filters before it goes through. That's like a pre-filter, I guess you could say, those pre-filters, and then it goes through this and then comes up through the car. So just wanted to show you guys that real quick, and now we're going to get back to fabbing up on my fuel lines. All right, so we got the fuel line and everything secured to the fuel pumps, as you can kind of see here. I should have got my flashlight, but fuel line and everything is hooked up to the fuel pump setup, -10 fitting, -10 line. And then I will show you guys, let me get my flashlight, headlamp, whatever, give you a better look. There we go. You guys can see that better now. And also, I probably will do a video too about the trap door, exactly where to cut. Everything is on LS1 Tech. LS1tech.com is something that nobody really uses anymore, I don't think, but I can tell you right now that almost everything that I did to this car, there's some type of write-up that's close to or similar to what I want to do to the car. So LS1 Tech has a whole write-up of exactly where to measure and everything, on how to cut your trap door to access your fuel pumps, unless you want to, you know, take your exhaust off and take your, you know, lower the rear end, take your, not your anti-sway bar, your, I can't even remember, guys, what it's called in the, below the gas tank. You got to take all that stuff out of the way in order to drop the tank and everything. For me, for what we were going to do with the car, we just decided to do the trap door and just leave it how it is. So I went ahead and finished up with this line, just got that done. And now I'll lay up under the car and show you guys how I mimicked the previous line and where it came out at. So fuel line comes out right there. Fuel filter in line here. I have it secured behind my rear brake lines that I have coming up from the front of the car. The line that runs here and then tees off where the rear end's at. And then the next thing we're gonna do is we are going to do the line off of the filter and then run it with these lines all the way down and secure everything, run it under our supports, and then run it up into the engine bay. So something I wanted to show you guys while I'm videoing now is I'm going to show you what it takes to put the AN fittings on PTFE line. So you have your two different types of fuel lines for these. You can do the rubber insides, or you can do where, like, it has the, this is PTFE, but you can get your AN line that has the rubber with the you know, the braided outside, and then the PTFE is what I run on everything on this car, other than I think the transmission lines. So something I can tell you is that PTFE line, and I wish I had one to give you guys a reference, but inside diameter of PTFE line is bigger than the inside diameter of a rubber interior line of the exact same size. So dash 8, if you were to hold them side by side, the inside diameter of this is a little bit bigger, and it's noticeable. Not huge, but it is a noticeable difference. Also, the PTFE line is what is good for if you want to do methanol, ethanol, whatever. Some guys haven't had issues with the rubber inside. I personally just choose not to do that because I don't want rubber to break down and get, you know, inside my little pieces, inside my injectors, or, you know, I don't want to have the issues of that. So we run PTFE on everything. The rubber lines, it is a different style fitting. It's kind of like an all-in-one. So this will be a PTFE fitting, and I can show you guys it has like a ferrule and everything in it. If I can get the bag open. Sorry about the mess, but, you know, I don't really have so much room. But on the rubber line, it is kind of all one piece, and the ferrule is actually, it's like a beveled tip, and it's all built into one. And you have your piece that slides on the line, and then this goes down and creates your seal against the actual, I guess, male end of the fitting. So PTFE, though, has the ferrule, and I'll show you guys how to do this. I wanted to video this as we're going through this process. So what I always do is, this is the end that I'm going to be feeding up under the car, under the subframe supports that we have on the car. I just keep it tight to the body of the car, but I'm going to have to put the fitting on after we feed it through. Otherwise it won't fit. So something else that I recommend you guys do if you want to do this also and run, it doesn't matter what size it is, -6, -8, whatever. Depending on where you're going to run it, don't put the fittings on first. Do the fittings kind of as you go, depending on where you're going to put it, because the fitting is so much bigger than the line, it's just not going to fit through some of the spots you want to run it. So what I do though, I'm going to feed this in through, so I'm going to leave it taped. And I take my cutters here and just kind of nip this line back and work my way around a little bit at a time, because this is stainless, so this thing is not going to be able to take huge chunks out of it. But you can kind of nip this back and get all those really big burrs off there that'll cut the crap out of you. And just kind of continue to do that until you're confident with, because what's going to happen too is that this will also, now if you keep cutting and cutting and cutting it, it'll just kind of keep flaring itself out. I'm just trying to get rid of all the big burrs and everything, because what has to happen is the ferrule, and I'll show you guys that now. Let's see, where's my knife at? Here we go. And I kind of just take, which again, like I said, I spray this hose out with brake cleaner, and I just kind of take my knife and just go around the inside of this line just gently to kind of make sure that I'm getting any of these little plastic pieces that are kind of a rough edge that will stop it from sealing properly. This one's kind of being difficult. There we go. And obviously it is better if it's a nice straight flush cut, but it's not extremely, you know, paramount that you get that perfect. So what I do is I just kind of, without stabbing myself, I kind of squeeze that line in some. And then I'm going to feed the female, which I call the female end, down over this line. And some of it, it's kind of inevitable that it's going to push some of it back, but you see how that just went down over top of that. And then I kind of just work it. You can just kind of use that to keep it in place. Now, you take your ferrule and you put it down over top of that plastic line. Now you can see that there are still a little, you know how easy that went over the top of it. There are still a little bit of plastic pieces that I'll kind of use the ferrule as a guide and kind of get those pieces just kind of cleaned out of there. And they won't, I mean, there we go. Now, I'll take a little bit of WD-40, and I'll spray this just a little bit. Well, came out way too much, but just a little bit of that. So that way I can work that down inside this plastic tube. And you can do all of this by hand. So there we go. That's all the way seated in. And if you want to, if you have a little hammer, you can kind of smack that on, use a dead blow, a regular hammer. You can hit it against a flat surface and kind of get that pushed on there. Now what you do is run your female line up over the top and start threading it on. And it goes on really easy. You know, you can see that that's going on nice and smooth. Now, I'll twist by hand until I can't get it to rotate anymore. All right, just so right about there. And then, let me go back. I got to get my wrenches because I left them under the car. Now, they do make AN like specific wrenches for these lines, so you don't scar them up or you don't, you know, get them. It doesn't cause you a whole lot of issues to do what we're doing, but I just use my vise. I work with what I have. So what I'll do now is put this in this vise, and I will clamp it down on the center. It's clamped on this little center support piece here. And then I will take, I believe, a 25 millimeter. No. Take my adjustable then. And I will just start to run that on. Move it out just a little bit and get it flush. There we go. And then I will take this and twist this onto while holding. So you do not want this line to spin in your hand. So while I'm wearing these gloves, the main reason is so I can hold this line steady, twist this on. Now what this is doing is this line's already wanting to spin. So what it's doing is now is that it's compressing the ferrule that's inside the hose into this fitting and sandwiching it in together to create your seal. Now, once you get to the point where you're holding that line and it's not, it won't, you can't hold it steady, you can just allow that line, because now that fitting is getting really, really tight, which is what you want to make a proper seal. So as you twist that in, and what I kind of do is I'll end up stopping where the grooves of this match with this, just a little bit of OCD, which will be right there. So now this is done. This free spins, and you guys can kind of see down in there, but you can look. I don't know if you can kind of see down in there where that plastic PTFE inside line is, but it worked perfectly. Sandwiched the ferrule in and gave you a nice compression fit inside that fitting. So that's what you want. So what I'll do now is I will hook this line to the outlet of the fuel filter and then run this side, feeding that through the subframe connectors this way, and then I will probably feed it up into the engine bay and then probably start my Y. This one I ran a decent amount of hose. This actually was up under the car. I want to get this inside of the engine bay a little bit, so I'll probably stop where the steering column comes through the steering column where the U-joints are, comes through the firewall. I'll probably put my Y somewhere around there, and we'll just have to adjust the length of these lines a little bit. But same exact thing. So every time, each one of these lines, you're going to do the exact same way you did this, and then I'll run that now, and then I'll show you guys basically the finished product. I'll probably go ahead and get the Y in and then go ahead and run my other lines, and ultimately what I'm gonna have is gonna be the exact same length as the one that came out of the car. It's just the Y is gonna be in a different spot. So this hose will be a little bit longer. The Y will probably be up here somewhere. So I'll just make up the difference. So you guys will see that soon. All right, guys, so here we are with the final update. As you can see, I got my Y and everything. It's all, I got it zip tied to the return line, which obviously is not going to stay there, but I'll go ahead and climb under the car and show you how I routed the new fuel lines. And what I'll end up doing is I'm going to leave the Y the way that it is now, because since I moved the location, I won't know exactly the length. It didn't really work out the way that I thought it would, so I don't exactly know the length that I need to go from the Y, those two fittings there, to come up, and one's gonna go obviously to the driver's side fuel rail, and the other line will need to be longer to come over to the passenger side. I just won't know exactly the length that I need in order to make the jump to the rear of each fuel rail. So that'll be something that we do whenever we get the motor back in the car. And that way we have something that we can aim for, and we won't have to worry about adjusting the length of the fuel lines and having to recut them and all that fun stuff. So now I'll go ahead and climb under the car and show you guys. So right there is where that Y comes out at the firewall. Excuse me, like, yeah, right at the firewall. And I have it routed. And I use these little, I guess they're kind of, I think they market them as AN fuel line clamps. And they got a couple different sizes. So there's my feed and return that I use one of the factory brake line brackets to secure, and then you went ahead and ran my fuel line bracket, and then that is for the overflow jug, the rubber line here. So it runs back, runs over the top of the subframe connector, and then got another bracket there, little I think it's a 5/8. That's on the return line. Have my different style bracket here. They just holds the lines, evenly spaces them away from each other. And then back here is where I have my filter and everything. So, and up above there is where the pumps are. So it turned out really good. I mean, I'm very, very happy with it. The routing is extremely clean. And like I said, I'm gonna leave that how it currently is now, and just, you know, cut them the length when I need to, whenever I get the motor back in the car, so that way we're not chasing our tail on that. But that's it, guys. So that is the gist of the fuel line rundown. The next step is going to be to do the transmission. So whenever we get the everything, I've got a couple other things to button up, but once we get the little things squared away with readjusting the trans lines and everything like that, like little things, we'll get the transmission set in place. Then once that happens, we can work on getting the motor put in. I mean, there's not really a whole lot that's going to be, you know, I don't want to, I think putting the motor in first and then trying to get the transmission in would, you know, I've done that many times with this car. It's kind of a nightmare. Now that the car is up on these wheel cribs, it's a little bit higher, but it's kind of a nightmare to try to get a transmission out from under this car when it's on jack stand, just because of how big the bell housing is on the transmission for the Turbo 400. So what I'll do is probably just take the transmission in through the front, drop it down in the engine bay, take it in this way, get it up in the car, and then there won't be anything bracing the front of the transmission because we're not running a mid plate on this car. So in order to support the front of the transmission, we'll get the trans jack under the car and just have that there until the motor gets set in, and then you can secure the motor and the transmission together. So next step is going to be finishing up putting the dump valve back on the transmission, which I have routed from transmission goes to here, which I have a little cork in that now, so nothing gets in there. But dump valve is up here on this shelf, kind of buried back in there. We'll put the dump valve on, guess put the converter, fill the converter, put the converter in on the transmission, and then set it in the car, wire the dump valve back up, and then route my vent tube. I'll probably extend this vent tube that ended up kind of retapping the housing and doing 1/4 inch hydraulic lines. And the higher this vent tube, the better. One of the problems I was having with this transmission was, and I'll make this quick because we'll do another video about this, but basically when I was on the trans brake, it was actually with the factory vent tube, it was actually losing a decent amount of fluid, and I wasn't really paying too much attention to it until when I tore this down to do a refresh on it. You know, we noticed that it was like low on fluid, like pretty, I would say 1/4 or more, maybe 2 quarts low. So it was dumping a lot of fluid when I was on the brake out of the vent tube. So with this, how I have it is whenever it vents, the fluid will be able to go through the straight passage and return back into, I put a fitting down here, which you guys might be able to see. I went ahead and put a 90-degree fitting and drilled and tapped where the factory speedo was. So fluid will be able to come back through, go back into the transmission, and then this will be the pressure relief. And I'll go ahead and run this up through the floorboard and just vent it, you know, back into the car, because there's not, I mean, it's not gonna be something where you're like breathing toxic fumes or anything like that. So that'll be the next step. So stay tuned, guys. Thank you.